It is part of who I am.
If someone told me you can't do it, then I'm just going to do it.
It got kind of into a self-challenge.
It went this way, it came this way.
The next challenge was basically to do it live.
100 years ago, Robert Ripley went on a quest to the farthest reaches of the globe in search of the extraordinary and unusual. Today, the adventure continues, searching for the world's most bizarre, astonishing secrets. On Ripley's. Believe it or not.
There are limits to the physical world, and most of us happily exist within that framework. But a rare few seem to transcend everything we thought we knew. I'm Bruce Campbell, and these are the people who defy all expectations, from the limits of human endurance to the laws of physics themselves. If you're not amazed by the end of this, check your pulse.
Florian Kohler has been running the table for over a decade. Today, he will have to push himself harder than ever in order to break a record held by a billiard legend, himself.
My name is Florian Kohler, also known as Venom, and my profession is to basically show off in pool halls. I'm a professional pool trick shot artist, and I'm a 2-time World Cup trick shot champion. I'm mainly known for being as extreme as possible.
For 30-year-old Florian Kohler, the felt of the pool table is a blank canvas. The balls are his paint. The cue stick, his brush.
The trick shot is kind of a special thing to me, and I really believe it's in crossing in between sport and art. It's a fine line between creativity enough to make something new and to be accurate and efficient in a live show.
Trick shots started as a way for pool players to entertain crowds after professional matches. For decades, they were considered a lesser skill, a novelty without much merit. But today, that attitude has changed.
It's kind of like comparing, freestyle BMX to Tour de France. It's both on a bike, but one guy's gonna do a triple backflip, and the other guy's gonna try to go as fast as possible. It's just two very different things, and they don't have much in common anymore. I started from basically nothing. I had no parents that play pool. I remember I was driving and I hear this ad on the radio, somebody selling a pool table for really cheap. I told my parents back then I was just 17, and they decided to buy it for my birthday. I had no idea how to play pool. Kind of looked online, and I saw trick shots, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna learn trick shots, and it'll teach me how to play pool. And the mindset with trick shots was to be creative and invent something new, and I really got into it, and it got kind of into a self-challenge.
In just a year, Florian mastered all the classic trick shots.
What really I needed to do was to make it more extreme. It really was the same shot the last 60 years, and everybody just copied those guys. They invented the shots, and I was like, why does nobody invent something new? And I just really got hooked into this new thing and try to create something special, make my own mark out of it.
Florian set to work creating his own trick shots, recording them and posting them online under the name Venom. And still, it wasn't enough.
The next challenge was basically to do it live. It's one thing to do videos, it's a totally other thing to do live shows. And I discovered that you didn't have to make it one time every hour, you had to make it, every 3 tries. So it kind of changed my mindset again. Boom, first shot goes in and the people cheering on you. It's like, wow, it's actually, it's so good. So then you make the second one and people cheer more and then you kind of push your limits. But from there, it just kept going and the word kind of spread that, so the guy's not only just good on the internet, he can actually do it live. Because I think I wasn't a pool player by nature, so most of those guys they play pool since they're 8 years old and learn the real game and then do trick shots. I came up from trick shots, so I had no limits, and to me it was just a blank piece of paper that I could draw something new on it, and I was able to just really create something special.
Florian has a repertoire of hundreds of tricks, thousands, I don't know. I've lost count.
I'm mostly known for what we call massé shots, which is when you hold the cue vertical and you impact the cue ball vertical and try to make it spin a lot. We're gonna go red ball here and another red ball right there. It's a long rail massé, so basically I'm gonna hit the cue ball up all the way into the red, make the red in the corner, cue ball come back, hit the other red.
Florian pushes massé shots to the extreme, curving the ball around the table in unexpected ways. He also holds 5 Guinness World Records titles for other billiard skills.
The first one's it's a kind of a funny one. So I own the longest cue in the world, about 17 feet. So I show up for the world record shoots, and they told me you have to make all 8 balls. I'm like, wow, that's not so easy. Then I have the fastest 15 balls jump shot. Fastest 15 balls one-handed. Then I have the longest spin, trying to spin the cue ball as long as possible. And most balls jumped over an obstacle in a minute.
Florian's probably the hardest worker I know.
Just like that.
He just pushes and pushes. Even if he gets sick, he still doesn't stop.
Today, he doesn't just want to break his own record, he wants to shatter it.
I've been working a lot on trying to beat my world record for the longest spin. It's 23 seconds as of right now. My main goal is to beat 30 seconds. I truly believe it's reachable, and I think over 30 seconds is gonna make it nearly impossible for people to beat it.
For this challenge, precision is as important as power. Florian must strike the cue ball off-center to send it spinning, and hard enough for the spin to sustain itself. But too hard and the ball will travel across the table and hit the bank, where friction will slow its rotation.
Ball. Stay spinning. Come on. Come on, keep spinning. Spinning, ball. Still going, still going, still going. And stop.
32:27.
Yeah, told you it was gonna beat 30 seconds. Not bad. The first love I have for the game, it really is creating new shots, and I really never thought I was gonna be able to make it as a living.
Florian used trick shots to defy logic, but sometimes the greatest trick of all is staying alive. Picture this. You're trapped at the bottom of the ocean, in total darkness with just a tiny pocket of air to breathe for 3 days. That's a neat trick.
Around 4 a.m. on May 26, 2013, off the coast of Nigeria in Western Africa, a tugboat hits a rogue wave in the churning waters of the Atlantic Ocean. The ship's cook, Harrison Okene, is the only member of the 12-man crew who happens to be awake.
The next thing I saw was the waving of the vessel. It went this way, it came this way. The next thing I saw was like 360.
Then, the boat starts sinking.
All lights went off. I'm down there.
Trapped in the belly of the boat, 98 feet below the surface, Harrison has only seconds to react as the vessel floods.
And the force of the water that was coming from under pushed me down to the toilet of the second engineer. And the moment the water pushed me there, the door just goes closed.
Luckily, there's an air pocket.
I have a bruise on my head, and I was bleeding, but I was also trying to open the door because I was already hearing the crew shouting, dying. One after the other, one after the other. I couldn't hear the sound anymore. I was afraid, actually. This is how I'm going to die.
I was creating an extension of my personality, making myself a sort of character.
There is a new way to see through any kind of darkness, through any kind of challenge.
In May 2013, off the western coast of Africa, a rogue wave bears down on a helpless tugboat. And one crew member, Harrison Okene, is about to test the limits of human survival.
He's now stuck 98 feet underwater, in the pitch black, with no food and barely any oxygen. There's no more sound coming from any of his 11 crewmates, and no way to know if any of them are still alive.
I was afraid, actually. This is how I'm going to die.
Growing up in a small Nigerian town, all Harrison wanted was to follow in his mother's footsteps.
My mom has a restaurant. When she was cooking, I always looked at her. I want to assist her.
After learning from his mom and working in several different restaurants, Harrison got a job as a cook aboard a ship in 2011.
It was not easy for me because I had to go through the seasickness. I threw up for 3 days and I'm the one cooking at the same time.
Harrison eventually got over his queasiness. Now, 2 years later, stuck inside a shipwreck, he wishes he'd stayed on land for good. After 3 days of torture with no food or drinkable water, time is running out.
I couldn't see anything. It's like someone being in a coffin. I couldn't be able to breathe anymore because there's no more oxygen in there. I just started praying. Start praying from prayers. I started worshiping for worshiping. And I got tired and I stopped. And when I stopped, I had to zero my mind. I said to myself, if it's His will as it is in heaven, for death to come, let it come.
As Harrison waits to die, a team of South African divers is dispatched from their base 150 miles away to recover the crew's remains.
Retrieving dead bodies is something that very few divers do in their lifetimes, in their careers, and this was the first time for me.
But getting into the tugboat won't be easy.
In Nigerian waters, they tend to lock the doors from the inside at night time to keep the pirates out. So basically, they gave us big sledgehammers and steel wedges, and we had to break the doors open.
Nico and his team smashed through doors, room by room, finding one dead body after another. Horribly, there are no survivors.
Okay, so have you come into the next deck, onto the main deck?
I saw the flash of the light. I think it's a diver coming down to the vessel. That is when I jumped in the water. I was following him. I tried waving my hands to him.
When I saw the hand for the first time, I thought maybe I just bumped into a dead body.
What's that? Okay. All right, you found one, yeah?
But when I stuck my hand out and I grabbed his hand and he started pushing back, I almost had a heart attack, honestly.
He's alive, he's alive. Okay, keep him there, keep him there.
I lost my breath when he grabbed me.
I was not scared
I was
anymore.
not scared anymore. I just let me just touch him. I don't even know if I can be rescued by him, so I just stabbed him.
If you've seen a couple of dead bodies already and then you find someone alive, you don't expect it. When I saw Harrison in the epoch for the first time, the only thing I could think of was how lucky this man must have been to find this one air pocket in this vessel.
Okay.
But the fact that he didn't lose his mind inside the little air pocket, that's what I think saved his life.
All right.
I was
having tears of joy. I was filled with tears of joy. I'm just like the Lord has answered my prayer. I told him, I am so cold.
All right, get him out of the water. We don't want hypothermia. Go back up there.
No, I've never used diving equipment before in my life.
All right, now you mustn't panic, eh?
It took them 3 hours to get me off that place.
What's your name? Harrison. All right, let's go.
Against all odds, Harrison makes it to the medical station. But because he's been underwater for so long, he needs to spend the next 3 days in a decompression chamber.
The first thing he asked us is, where's the other guys? Where's the other crew? And we couldn't find anyone else alive. For us, it was a happy moment, but I could see for him, it was obviously quite a sad moment. Being rescued is one thing, but losing all your friends and all your crewmates, it's like brothers, so it's almost like losing a family member.
Harrison's experience has left him terrified of water and tormented by insomnia. But he's been trying to overcome his trauma. Believe it or not, for the last 6 months, he's been training to get a commercial diver's license. Today, he's leaving the controlled confines of a pool and heading out into a lake for the first time.
What am I scared of? Why am I scared of water? I don't want to be scared of anything in my life. That is when I took the decision to become a diver. I believe I was rescued, and someday I am going to rescue someone as well.
It's funny how the world works. One man's darkness is another man's light. In Southern California, there's a guy who found a way to envision the world without his eyes.
There is a new way to see. We can create ways to see through any kind of darkness, through any kind of challenge, through any kind of apprehension or fear.
Daniel is an amazing individual. If you didn't get a chance to observe the fact that he was blind, you would never know that he was.
the world went dark for Daniel Kish at age 1. But all on his own, he developed a new way to see. A sonar system that humans aren't supposed to have. Believe it or not.
It's hard enough for someone with hands to fly. No one has ever been certified to fly an airplane with their feet, so it was almost like having to create a new way to fly an airplane.
California native Daniel Kish lost his eyesight as a baby, but that hasn't stopped him from doing anything and everything.
I'm Daniel Kish. I am the president of World Access for the Blind. My blindness does not define me. It just is part of who I am.
53-year-old Daniel Kish had retinal cancer when he was a baby.
My first eye was removed at the age of 7 months, and my second at 13 months.
But Daniel's mother didn't want him to feel different.
When I was very, very little, I had misbehaved, and my mom sent me to my room, and my grandmother's response was, how can you discipline that child? You don't even know if he's going to live. My mom's response was, yes, but if he is going to live, I'm not going to have a spoiled brat on my hands. My parents didn't have negative assumptions or biases about blindness.
Neither did Daniel. Before he could even walk, without any input from experts or adults, Daniel began developing a skill called echolocation.
Human echolocation is a way of seeing with sound. So if you're using light, your brain uses patterns of reflected light to build images of what's around you. And if you're using echolocation, you're throwing out sound, it bounces off of things around you, comes back, and your brain can build images from those patterns.
Echolocation is common in bats, toothed whales, dolphins, and some species of birds and shrews. Who knew a blind little boy could learn this skill too? Animals emit clicks, whistles, or even ultrasound waves to sense their surroundings. Daniel adapted his own technique, pulling his tongue down from the roof of his mouth to make a click.
By all reports, I began clicking and finding my own way around somewhere between 15 and 18 months. It was just something that seemed natural for me to do.
MRIs of Daniel's brain in the midst of echolocation reveal something surprising, that his visual cortex is processing the clicks. He has literally rewired his brain to see in a whole new way.
Still hear it, we're still on track.
And he's able to share his technique with other blind people like Brian.
That tongue click changed my life forever. It really gave me a tool to be more independent.
Daniel is the founder and president of a California advocacy group called World Access for the Blind. So far, he's shared his gift with 500 blind children.
In front of us here, we have a tree more up close in the foreground, but really farther away, we have the echo off the house.
Of course, there are houses surrounding the one that we're hearing. The houses are large.
And the important part, it's not the click in the mouth. Your focus is on the echo coming back at the speed of sound.
The spread is kind of spread out beyond that wall. And you'll know exactly.
Today, Daniel and Brian are teaching 9-year-old Nathan to use echolocation so he can safely ride his bike.
So you'll be knowing exactly where you are as you move.
Nathan was born blind. He was born with something called Peter's anomaly. And basically it means that everything with you is fine except your corneas don't develop in your eyes. I just accepted Nathan's just gonna be blind.
So, are you ready to get on your bike?
Yeah.
All right. Whenever you're ready, sir.
We introduce various activities and exercises that activate the auditory system to become more aware.
Use that active tongue click
to know where
people are. How do you recognize the garage, Nathan?
It comes in after a big opening. I can hear a lot of hollow in the open area.
Beautiful clicks. Yeah. He's able to go in a straight line. He's able to measure his distance off the two sides of the alley. He's able to turn around. So he's very aware of his space.
When Nathan first rode a bike, I was extremely proud of him. I was just amazed at how he could possibly do something like that. Daniel's work is fantastic.
He was able to take this skill and pass this along to other people.
Man's greatest and deepest fear is fear of the dark, fear of the unknown. Blind people who've learned to see through their own blindness have neutralized that fear.
What we've learned to do is see in the dark.
Against all odds, Daniel Kish is defying blindness in his own way. When it comes to physical limitations, there's a woman in New York who is also breaking the rules.
I think the goth subculture really does connect with my mindset. I feel like I can be myself, like there's a sense of freedom, and I felt like I fit in. I had to learn how to adapt, and I had to learn how to make the changes to be able to move forward. My name is Shirley Alvarez. I am an tragic doll.
When Shirley Alvarez was 9, something terrifying started happening to her body.
I remember I was in school and I started feeling these awful pains in my knees. I remember even having a hard time sitting on the floor. An 8-year-old trying to sit on the floor and I'm trying to do the pretzel. And I remember feeling so stiff, why can't I move? My grandmother took me to her general doctor. When I got there, there was a long staircase, and instead of walking them up, I actually ended up crawling. And I think that really shocked her, because I've always been such an active kid. There was definitely something abnormal. Thank you.
Doctors diagnosed Shirley with scleroderma, an autoimmune disease that's hardening her skin and internal organs.
My parents had a hard time accepting it in the beginning, just seeing all the changes, because it was very scary. I was diagnosed when I was a little girl, and being able to walk and dance and be as independent, and then out of nowhere, I just get struck with a disease that completely just changed my entire life.
But instead of holding up in her apartment, Shirley is determined to get living. Even if it means turning her disease into a public persona.
Plagued with the autoimmune disease scleroderma, Shirley Alvarez is trapped in a body that's turning to stone.
Shirley's future is uncertain. She doesn't just contend with tight skin. All the soft tissue in her body is hardening, including her internal organs. Most people with this disease don't live much beyond middle age.
It's so beautiful.
But Shirley refuses to let that prognosis paralyze her life. Instead, she's turned herself into a goth icon known as the Tragic Doll.
I think the Tragic Doll embodies two different worlds. I mean, there's the tragedy part. You look at pictures when I was a kid and you don't recognize me. Everything changed. And then there's a doll part where it's the sweet, the unaffected. I try to embrace that. I was creating an extension of my personality, making myself a sort of character or that I can play with. I can use the Tragic Doll concept and explore and express myself in that way. It embodies two different worlds, dark and light. It's accepting everything fully. That's me really coming out of my skin and expressing myself honestly, showing you every aspect of who I am.
As the Tragic Doll, Shirley has immersed herself in New York's goth underbelly, working as a model, musician, and writer.
Shirley expresses herself in very creative ways. I never have known her as one to mope around over anything. She's always creating. She's always filming music videos, and she's just always embracing life and living it to the fullest. It's something that I personally admire.
Shirley is a really strong person, very brave. You shouldn't be scared of her based on the things she wears or the things she likes.
Shirley has inspired many people by forming the Instagram and also Facebook page, and I think a lot of people relate to her, you know, just how empowering she could be and all that she's accomplished.
Today, Shirley has over 13,000 Instagram followers and a growing list of celebrity friends inspired by her perseverance.
I'm fighting a monster. Scleroderma being the monster, I have to battle it every single day, and that just doesn't go away. But within the nightmare, I've been able to find certain aspects of light, and I've been able to discover a lot about myself and connect with others. It's nice to have some people to go on the journey with you. Today I've been blessed with a nightmare.
Certain afflictions, like Shirley's, can make a person feel like they're trapped in their own body. But some people refuse to let their shortcomings hold them back or hold them down.
Tucson native Jessica Cox is always on the move. She's a successful author, speaker,
You can aspire to doing anything that you want to do.
Taekwondo black belt, and musician.
My name is Jessica Cox.
She does all this and more without arms. Now, Jessica is facing her greatest fear, taking to the sky
Okay, we're good.
using only her feet. Believe it or not.
Okay, that's it. I have to walk away.
I was born in the 80s in small town, Sierra Vista, Arizona. When my parents first discovered that I didn't have arms, so it was a total shock. The entire operating room during my mom's C-section went silent because no one expected this at all. And for a time there, it was very devastating for my family.
From a young age, Jessica was fitted with prosthetics, but it never felt right.
Well, as I started to develop and grow older and started to become aware of my difference, it was very difficult for me to come to terms with it. I was very angry and frustrated about my difference. Some of the kids came up and then called me like Captain Hook or Robot Girl. It was very dehumanizing in a sense.
I didn't give her any slack, you know, in the sense that she's gonna have to face a cruel world out there. And the easier I was on her then, I could make it harder for her later anyway.
Jessica knew that she had to make a change.
There was a time in my life when I started the first day of school without my fake arms. And I made this commitment that I would never wear them again.
So we have our weapons going to be in our right hand.
I decided that I was just going to do everything. And if someone told me you can't do it, then I'm just going to do it. And it was just the best decision I ever made.
And time. Set.
Free from trying to fit in, Jessica forged her own way.
She ended up getting 3 black belts in Taekwondo. She tried every sport there was. She was involved with tap dancing. My wife had her in every club in town.
Despite all her success, Jessica has one weakness she can't overcome.
And you have to pull it back straightly even.
Okay.
My greatest fear, flying.
There you go.
And it is not fear of heights. I love being in high places.
We have a slight crosswind from the north. Be a left crosswind, 5 knots, 10 knots down the runway.
I will climb and hike and do things like that. So it's not heights.
The oil level's good?
Yep.
It's losing contact with the ground.
Just make sure that there's no crack, no breaks, everything's in order.
Ever since I was a little girl, I would fall and not be able to stop myself from falling because most people would catch themselves with their hands and arms.
Okay, we get ready to go.
And so for me, if I fell, I would get probably hurt more so than the average person.
Now, Jessica is ready to conquer her fear once and for all by learning to pilot her own plane. Learning to fly can be daunting for anyone. For Jessica, it poses some unique challenges.
It's hard enough for someone with hands to fly.
I think I might have been a little concerned, not over-concerned, but concerned, about her safety.
So it took a certain type of instructor to be willing to teach me.
So we want to go up to 1700.
An instructor who could teach her to fly with her feet.
Jessica Cox was born without arms, but that hasn't stopped her from spreading her wings.
No one has ever been certified to fly an airplane with their feet, so it was almost like having to create a new way to fly an airplane. Getting my pilot certificate was the most physically demanding thing for me. But not only physically, but it was emotionally demanding because of my fear. And I actually bounced the airplane, and that was terrifying. It took 3 years, 3 different flight instructors, flight training in 3 states.
Jessica is the first armless pilot in history to be licensed by a government.
We had a crosswind on our runway of about 35, 40 degrees. Sometimes it was over 15 knots, so that was a challenge.
I'm particular about when I like to fly. I like smooth flying, but today was clearly a windy day, and so the turbulence made me a little unsettled up there. But, you know, you have to be prepared for anything.
It was a good flight. We have a saying, every flight you walk away from after landing is a good flight.
When all is said and done, it's the folks who refuse to relent that sear themselves into our memories, making us believers.